Las Vegas shines brightly in September 1997, hiding its dark, predatory nature. Inside the exclusive high-limit room of the MGM Grand Casino, the air feels incredibly heavy. A 59-year-old Australian media billionaire named Kerry Packer sits at the velvet table. He calmly pushes $20 million forward on a single hand of blackjack. The entire room holds its breath, watching the colossal mountain of chips. The experienced dealer hesitates for a fraction of a second, before revealing the fatal cards. Packer has busted his hand, instantly wiping out a fortune. $20 million vanishes into the casino vault in exactly 30 seconds. The casino staff collectively exhales a deep breath of relief. The pit boss secretly smiles while recording the massive profit. They believe this is the absolute best night of the entire fiscal year. Victory makes the house incredibly arrogant and totally blind to reality. The executives upstairs celebrate their triumph over one of the richest men in the world. They think they have completely conquered the fearless Australian media titan. But here is the terrifying truth they do not know yet. In this exact moment, they did not actually win $20 million. They simply stepped right into a meticulously calculated mathematical trap. Before this fateful trip ends, the MGM Grand will lose $40 million to this man. Kerry Packer does not just gamble blindly like an ordinary tourist chasing luck. He actively counts the cards and mercilessly calculates probability. His brilliant mind remembers every single card drawn from the velvet shoe. He stands ready to prove a horrifying point to the executives. The house does not always win when true genius enters the room. This is the unprecedented story of the highest-stakes gambler in human history. We are observing a man who walked into Las Vegas armed with unlimited financial power. He effectively destroyed the most robust defense mechanisms designed by gambling syndicates. The casinos never saw the real threat hiding behind his massive checkbook. They welcomed their ultimate destroyer with expensive champagne and luxurious penthouse suites. They handed him the keys to their own financial ruin. To truly comprehend this spectacular casino heist, we must understand the fundamental laws of gambling. The house always maintains an absolute mathematical advantage over normal players. They possess significantly more money than the average person sitting across the table. They can easily outlast you and wait patiently for probability to drain your wallet. But the entire system shatters when a player possesses equal or greater wealth. The mathematical balance of power shifts violently overnight. Losing $1 million terrifies a normal gambler into making desperate emotional mistakes. But when losing $10 million means absolutely nothing, the psychological game changes completely. Kerry Packer uses his massive bankroll as an unbreakable shield against standard casino tactics. He can easily lose 10 consecutive hands and still come back betting even harder. The pit bosses are totally unprepared to deal with an opponent who feels zero fear. The managers falsely assume that his massive bets indicate a severe gambling addiction. They analyze his aggressive play style and categorize him as just another wealthy, reckless whale. This catastrophic misjudgment prevents them from seeing the cold logic operating beneath his actions. While the casino executives count their initial profits, Kerry is already calculating his next strike. He intentionally feeds them a small victory to guarantee their ultimate destruction. The trap has been set flawlessly, right inside the most secure casino floor. No alarms sound and no security guards rush to intervene during this sophisticated operation. The brilliant billionaire sits quietly ordering drinks and smiling at the friendly cocktail waitresses. He plays the role of the careless high roller to absolute perfection. The house feels incredibly secure, while a financial hurricane rapidly builds momentum just across the table. We must understand who this predator really is before witnessing the final massacre. He did not simply walk off the street with a bag full of cash. He is an apex predator, born and raised in the cutthroat environment of international business. To comprehend how he broke Las Vegas, we must trace his origins back to Sydney. Let us rewind the timeline to examine the making of this unstoppable mathematical monster. Sydney, Australia, 1974. Kerry Packer inherits a massive media empire from his demanding father. Australian Consolidated Press controls television stations, magazines, and newspapers. His father Frank built this corporate behemoth from absolutely nothing and expected ruthless perfection. Kerry grew up completely immersed in this highly demanding environment. It forged his aggressive personality and taught him how to dominate competitive markets without mercy. Now Kerry controls the vast empire, and he immediately makes it even bigger. He launches Channel 9, transforming the entire Australian television landscape with bold American programming. He aggressively acquires new magazines and diversifies his wealth into highly profitable printing industries. By the 1990s, his net worth exceeds $6 billion. He officially becomes one of the wealthiest and most powerful men on the entire planet. But Kerry operates completely unlike other modern billionaires. He cares absolutely nothing about polite society or public respectability. He remains rough, blunt, and relentlessly aggressive in every single interaction. Once a government official attempted to tax his business operations more heavily, Kerry looked the bureaucrat dead in the eye and delivered a brutally honest response that immediately dominated national news headlines. He never apologizes for his wealth. Another journalist bravely asked if he paid his fair share of taxes to the government. His legendary response perfectly summarized his entire philosophy on life and business. He aggressively minimizes his tax burden because anyone who does not is simply a fool. He does not break the law, but rather bends the legal framework to his absolute advantage. The establishment hates his methods, but the public adores his defiance. This identical, fearless philosophy translates directly to his absolute passion for extreme gambling. He despises small, casual bets meant for simple weekend entertainment. He actively seeks massive stakes that make wealthy casino owners physically sweat. He plays competitive polo and bets millions on horse racing. But his ultimate passion remains high-stakes casino action. He craves games where pure mathematical skill and deep understanding of probability provide a tangible edge. By the early 1990s, he is a notorious regular in Las Vegas, London, and Monaco. He dominates any city offering incredibly high-stakes action, but the money itself is entirely irrelevant to his true motivation. The point is always the thrill of the intellectual challenge. He desperately needs to prove that his calculating mind is vastly superior to any established system. He plays a completely different psychological game. Kerry possesses a terrifying weapon that no other professional gambler can ever match. He commands an absolutely unlimited financial bankroll that breaks all standard casino mathematics. Standard gambling logic dictates that the house always wins because they can simply outlast any player. They casually wait for variance and probability to drain the challenger dry. But this entire mathematical foundation collapses when the player holds infinite ammunition. What happens when a player commands exactly as much money as the giant casino corporation, when losing $1 million registers as a meaningless rounding error on a balance sheet, when a man can lose 10 times in a row and still casually double his next bet? The fundamental math changes instantly. The entire game transforms into a brutal war of attrition. Kerry understands this unique advantage perfectly. Whenever Kerry walks into a luxury casino, the management teams immediately panic. Pit bosses gather nervously while security cameras lock firmly onto his broad shoulders. They know his style involves betting hundreds of thousands of dollars per hand for hours without any breaks. He forces the casinos to bring in extra chips and highly specialized dealers just to handle his massive volume of play. He is an unstoppable force. The stories of his legendary gambling sessions spread through the global criminal and elite networks. At Crockford's in London, he lost £11 million in a single night, setting a British record. He never blinked, simply paying in cash and walking out like nothing happened. This terrifying display of financial invulnerability makes him the most dangerous man to ever sit at a green felt table. The real war is starting. Kerry never accepts the standard rules when he enters a gambling establishment. Before he even touches a single card, he ruthlessly negotiates special conditions with the eager management. He demands private tables and insists on specific dealers who work quickly and efficiently. He forces the house to completely rewrite their maximum betting limits just to accommodate his massive wealth. The casino executives happily agree to all his outrageous demands, driven by pure greed and arrogance. They blindly trust the mathematical certainty of the house edge. They firmly believe that over a long enough timeline, his reckless gambling will eventually drain his pockets. They fail to realize that giving him these specific concessions is essentially handing him the weapon of their destruction. His ultimate weapon remains entirely invisible to the overhead surveillance cameras. Kerry is a master of mental mathematics, and he strictly counts the cards. He understands that blackjack is not merely a game of blind luck, but a dynamic mathematical equation. Every single card drawn from the shoe fundamentally alters the exact probability of the next hand. The science of counting cards revolves around tracking the ratio of high cards to low cards remaining in the deck. High cards like tens and aces heavily favor the player by creating strong hands and blackjacks. Low cards strictly favor the dealer because they prevent the house from busting on weak totals. By maintaining a running count, a player can identify the perfect moment to strike. Ordinary card counters inevitably get caught by vigilant casino security teams. Amateurs make obvious mistakes by betting small amounts during bad counts and suddenly pushing huge stacks of chips when the deck turns favorable. The surveillance operators spot this sudden fluctuation immediately. Within an hour, the amateur counter finds themselves blacklisted and permanently escorted out the back door by security personnel. But you absolutely cannot kick Kerry Packer out of your casino. He brings unparalleled international publicity and draws other wealthy whales to the tables. Furthermore, his card-counting strategy is camouflaged by his natural billionaire behavior. He never makes small bets. He consistently wagers hundreds of thousands of dollars on every single hand, regardless of the current mathematical count. His massive baseline bets perfectly disguise his true mathematical strategy. When the deck suddenly becomes rich in high cards, he discreetly escalates his wagers into the millions. To the pit bosses, watching closely, it merely looks like a fearless billionaire getting aggressive and chasing a rush. They completely miss the cold calculation driving those sudden multi-million-dollar bets on the table. This subtle variation allows him to extract a tiny mathematical advantage over the house. A 1 or 2% edge might sound totally insignificant to a casual observer, but when you are wagering up to $10 million per hand, that tiny percentage transforms into a devastating financial weapon. He effectively reverses the casino profit engine and points it directly at their own vault. Normal blackjack rules grant the house a slight edge, guaranteeing they win over time. If a regular player bets $1 million, they mathematically expect to lose $5,000. But with perfect counting, Kerry flips that exact ratio. When he bets $1 million with a positive count, he statistically expects to win $20,000 on average per hand. He multiplies this incredible advantage by playing hundreds of hands across grueling multi-hour sessions. At the Bellagio, he famously played 8 hands simultaneously, risking $2 million per round. The sheer volume of his perfect play completely overwhelms the standard mathematical models of the casino. They watch the chips disappear, but cannot understand the invisible mechanics draining their massive reserves. His absolute dominance is perfectly illustrated by a legendary encounter with a loud Texas oil tycoon. The arrogant Texan was boasting loudly about his massive ranch and his $100 million fortune. Kerry calmly walked over and offered to flip a single coin for the entire amount. The stunned tycoon immediately turned pale and backed away from the terrifying challenge. That brief interaction perfectly highlights the vast psychological gulf between Kerry and ordinary millionaires. For the boastful Texan, $100 million represented his entire life legacy. For the fearless Australian titan, that exact same amount is simply a number used to play a game. This absolute lack of financial fear makes him the ultimate nightmare for any casino executive in the world. MGM Grand Las Vegas, September 1997. Kerry Packer sits down at a completely private blackjack table located inside the highly exclusive high-limit room. There are no other wealthy players present, just him and a highly experienced dealer waiting for instructions. He aggressively negotiates special rules before the first card is even drawn from the deck. He demands a completely unprecedented betting limit of $10 million maximum per single hand. The desperate casino executives readily agree to this massive financial risk. They have seen Kerry lose millions before, and they confidently assume the mathematical odds will eventually swing back in their favor. Besides, even if he manages to win a few hands, the global publicity generated by his presence is practically priceless. They firmly believe other wealthy whales will rush to their establishment, trying to match his legendary gambling status. Kerry begins the intense session by pushing $1 million forward for the opening hand. He quickly escalates his wagers to $2 million and then $5 million, depending entirely on the mathematical count. He watches every single card, closely keeping a strict mental tally while adjusting for multiple decks. He calculates the true count with the precision of a powerful supercomputer hidden behind a calm and smiling billionaire exterior. The first hour of play yields mixed results with normal financial variance. He wins some massive hands and loses others fluctuating rapidly by millions of dollars. He is up $5 million, then suddenly down $3 million before climbing back to an $8 million profit. The observing pit boss relaxes, assuming this is just standard volatility from a wealthy guy throwing money around blindly. Nothing seems unusual about his behavior yet, but Kerry actively sees a completely different mathematical reality developing on the table. The strict deck composition is rapidly changing as the count climbs higher and higher. More high cards than low cards have been dealt into the discard tray. This heavily indicates the remaining shoe is incredibly rich, with tens and aces perfectly favoring the player. Kerry silently recognizes the exact mathematical moment to strike with absolute maximum force. He suddenly pushes a massive stack of chips forward, betting $8 million on a single hand. The nervous dealer distributes the cards, giving Kerry a very strong total of 20. The dealer shows a weak 6 card facing up. Pure probability dictates the dealer will bust approximately 42% of the time in this exact scenario. Kerry sits perfectly still, knowing the mathematical advantage is entirely his. The dealer flips her hidden hole card, revealing a 10 for a dangerous total of 16. Strict casino rules require her to hit and draw another card immediately. She pulls a 9 and busts with a terrible total of 25. Kerry instantly wins $8 million in less than 30 seconds. He shows absolutely no emotion, simply watching the dealer push a mountain of high-value chips across the green felt. He decides to leave his entire $8 million wager on the table for the next round. The dealer reshuffles the cards and starts a fresh shoe while Kerry mentally resets his internal count. More cards are dealt rapidly, and the mathematical count stays incredibly positive. The deck remains dangerously rich, favoring the fearless billionaire. Kerry calmly pushes more chips forward to reach the absolute maximum bet of $10 million. The sweating dealer distributes the fresh cards, giving Kerry a solid 19. The dealer shows a completely average 7 card facing upward. The underlying math is incredibly close, giving Kerry a 79% chance to win or tie the hand. The final cards fall rapidly, and the dealer draws to a strict 17. Kerry easily wins another $10 million, pushing his total session profit to a staggering $18 million. The favorable deck composition persists, and Kerry continues executing his flawless betting strategy. He pulls back to a safe $2 million when the count drops slightly. He immediately pushes $10 million forward whenever the true count rises to his strict advantage. A deep sense of dread finally begins to wash over the observing pit boss. Something feels incredibly wrong, but he cannot identify any visible form of illegal cheating. Kerry never touches the physical cards, and the dealer remains completely legitimate. Every single shuffle follows the strict standard operating procedures perfectly. Yet the Australian billionaire keeps winning the absolutely massive hands that financially matter. After 2 intense hours of play, he is up $30 million. The terrified casino manager is urgently called to the surveillance room to review the security tapes and desperately search for any obvious mistakes. The desperate manager finds absolutely nothing suspicious on the high-definition monitors. There is no illegal collusion and no marked cards being utilized at the table. He seriously considers stopping the game by falsely claiming technical difficulties or dealer fatigue. But Kerry cleverly secured his right to play through a strict written negotiation beforehand. Publicly kicking him out for simply winning would trigger a catastrophic public relations disaster for the casino. After 4 grueling hours of flawless mental mathematics, Kerry has amassed an unbelievable fortune. He is currently sitting on exactly $40 million in pure profit from a single gambling session. This monumental figure represents the absolute biggest single-session win in Las Vegas history by a massive margin. Nothing else in the long, dark history of the city even comes close to this level of financial devastation. He calmly stands up from the velvet table and stretches his broad shoulders like a man who just finished a casual morning stroll. He looks directly at the exhausted dealer who has been dealing the cards for the last several hours. He casually pushes $500,000 worth of high-denomination chips across the green felt. It is an astronomical tip for simply surviving the brutal shift. The The young dealer physically shakes while pulling the massive mountain of chips toward her side of the table. $500,000 represents more money than she could possibly earn in 10 entire years of dealing cards. Kerry turns his back and walks toward the main cashier cage to collect his massive casino check. He leaves behind an absolutely empty table and a completely devastated corporate balance sheet. The terrified casino manager stares blankly at the empty chair from the dark surveillance control room above the floor. $40 million has vanished from their strict corporate accounts in exactly 4 hours of perfectly legal play. They finally realize a horrifying truth that shakes the very foundation of their massive empire. They did not experience a string of bad luck, but were systematically dismantled by superior intelligence. The very next morning, high-ranking casino executives hold a desperate emergency meeting to discuss the Kerry Packer disaster. The panicked directors carefully review every single surveillance tape, searching desperately for any sign of illegal cheating. They closely study his hand movements and eye contact, hoping to find a reason to legally confiscate his massive winnings. But the flawless footage reveals absolutely nothing except pure mathematical perfection. He played every single hand perfectly and won the $40 million with absolute legal fairness. But losing that amount of money to a single player is simply not sustainable for any corporate gambling institution. If the fearless Australian billionaire can execute this mathematical massacre once, he can easily return and do it again. One desperate executive nervously suggests officially banning him from all company properties permanently. The other executives immediately laugh at the absurd suggestion of banning the most famous high roller on Earth. Publicly kicking out Kerry Packer would trigger an absolute public relations nightmare for the entire global gambling industry. Wealthy whales from around the world would instantly view the casino as incredibly weak and completely avoid playing there. They desperately need his famous presence to attract other high-spending tourists. Instead of banning him, the desperate executives decide to completely rewrite the fundamental rules of high-stakes blackjack. They implement massive operational changes specifically designed to neutralize his devastating mathematical advantage. They lower maximum betting limits and enforce highly aggressive card shuffling procedures to prevent accurate counting. They refuse to ban the legend, but they effectively rebuild the entire system to protect themselves from his terrifying brain. Word of these frantic new rules quickly spreads across the famous Las Vegas Strip and throughout the global gambling community. Every major corporate casino immediately adopts similar defensive measures to protect their own vulnerability against the Australian Titan. They all silently agree that they must protect themselves from the only man capable of breaking their infallible system. The legend of the unbeaten whale becomes a permanent industry nightmare. Kerry hears about the frantic rule changes and simply laughs from the comfort of his massive media empire. He genuinely does not care about the new restrictions because he already achieved his primary psychological goal. He successfully proved his ultimate point by beating the house completely on their own terms within their own building. The billions in his bank account remain entirely secondary to the thrill of the victory. He officially proved that the mighty casino house does not always win the final battle of mathematical endurance. The system can absolutely be broken if you possess the supreme intelligence to recognize the hidden vulnerabilities. You also need an unlimited bankroll and the sheer nerve to bet everything on a mental calculation. Most ordinary people lack the resources and the raw courage to attempt such a terrifying feat. But Kerry Packer was never an ordinary man bound by the traditional rules of fear and financial limitation. He walked into the neon desert and forced the most arrogant industry on earth to surrender completely. His incredible legacy remains permanently etched into the dark history of professional gambling and casino security protocols. The ghost of the fearless billionaire still haunts the high-limit rooms of Las Vegas today.